Assalamualaikum and good evening to Madam Noor Ezrin binti Yusof. Today my group will be presenting on chapter 10, 11 and 12. So my name is Syafiqah Nur Syahada binti Zakaria and I will be the first presenter. So I will talk about leadership. Leadership is the ability to influence and enable others to contribute toward the effectiveness of the organization. Next, the perspective of leadership. There are 5 perspectives of leadership, which are competency perspective, behavioral, contingency, transformational, and implicit leadership perspective. Competencies perspective is a personal characteristic that lead to superior performance in leadership role. In competency perspective, there are 8 leaderships. The first one is personality, which are extroversion. Second, self-concept that involves positive self-evaluation and high self-esteem. Third, drive, which are inner motivation to pursue goals. Fourth, integrity that has truthfulness. Fifth, leadership motivation that has high need for socialize power to achieve organizational goals. 6. Knowledge of the business, which understands external environment. 7. Cognitive, such as above average cognitive ability and able to solve real-world problems. And the last one, emotional intelligence. Next, competency perspective limitation. The first one is implies universal approach, which are individual potentials and no promise in gaining business success. Second, alternative combinations of competencies might work well, such as effective leaders. Third, assumes leadership is within the person, but leadership is also about relation with followers. Fourth, competencies refer to the leadership's potentials, not performance, which is innate factors that drive leaders' behavior. Furthermore, leader behavior also involves in perspective of leadership. Leadership behavior perspective is success in leadership depends more on what leader does than on his traits. There are 2 behavior leader perspective. Firstly, people-oriented behaviors or employee-centered. In this perspective, the leader are usually considerate, helpful, and supportive. Secondly, task-oriented behaviors, which is this perspective, leader will planning, scheduling work, coordinating activities. The behavior perspective also have its own limitations, such as people task categories, must subcategories of leader behavior that may be distinct, which is different effects on employees' well-being and performance. For example, some leader, he or she has different attitudes according to employees' performance. If employees perform and contribute in the organization, the leader will be more likely to give attention and support. Besides, assumes best leaders display a high level of both people. Next part will go leadership model. The first leader behavior, like I said just now, in part of leadership style, which are directive, supportive, and others. Second, employee contingencies like skills. Third, leader effectiveness like employee motivations. And lastly, environmental contingencies, which are task structure and team dynamic. So in situation leadership model, there are identified 4 leadership styles, which is the first one, telling, which is high task or low relationship, and then selling, which is high task or high relationship, and then participating, which is high relationship or low task behavior, and then delegating, which is low relationship or low task behavior. Last but not least, in situation leadership model also has popular model but lacks research support. Transformational leader is a changing agent to their people where they focus on encouraging and motivates the development of their follower, while the transactional leader focus on achieving current objectives more efficiently. They also promote compliance through rewards and punishments. At the other hand, charismatic leadership is a leader who uses his or her communication skills, persuasiveness, and charm to influence others. The emerging view found that charismatic leader is different from transformational leader, as charisma is a personal trait that provides referent power. There are 4 elements of transformational leadership, which are first, create a strategy vision. Second, communication the vision.
Assalamualaikum, my name is Nur Afika bint Abu Qasim. I will continue the presentation. I will explain about the evaluating transformational leadership. As we know, transformational leadership is a leadership approach that occurs in individual and social system. Transformational leadership is important because it can higher employee satisfaction, performance, and others. Not only that, transformational leadership had limitation, which is some models have a circular logic. Transformational leader defined by their success rather than behavior. So the result, those models have no predictive value. Next, implicit leadership perspective. Perception of characteristic of effective leaders had three types, which is stereotyping leadership, attributing leadership, and need for situational control. Stereotyping leadership. Everyone has a preconceived notion about the features and behavior of an effective leaders. It also have prototype or stereotype of idealized leadership. For example, everyone make a male has a leadership because of the stereotype thinking, but having a female leadership can overcome the bias and the stereotype also. Attributing theory of leadership assumes that individuals make inference about leadership ability by observing and interpreting certain environmental and behavioral cues. Leaders are given credit or blame for a company's success or failure. Cross-cultural leadership involves the ability to influence and motivate people's attitude and behavior in the global community to reach a common organizational goal. But there are several issues about the cross-culture. The first one is societal culture, values and practice affect leaders. Societal culture means cover norm, expectation and shared value of a society or a group of people living in a particular place. It also can influence decision and action. Lastly, gender issue in leadership. Male and female leaders have similar tasks and people-oriented leadership. But some companies have gender issue, which is unequal pay. Usually, female leaders had received lower than male leaders even they have similar tasks. Participative leadership style is used more often by female leaders. Evaluating female leaders still receive negative evaluation as leader due to prototype and gender stereotype. But evidence that they are good at emerging leadership style, such as coaching or teamwork. Next, I will explain about organizational structure. Organizational structure means division of labor and patterns of coordination, communication, workflow, and formal power that direct organizational activities such as teams, organizational culture, organizational change. Firstly, division labor means subdividing work into separate jobs assigned to different people. Other than that, division of labor is limited by ability to coordinate work. It also can increase work efficiency and make it necessary as company grow and works become more complex. Next, work can be divided into three types, which different personal specialists such as accountant, engineer, graphic designer, and so on. It also can be divided in different activity necessity by the natural sequence of the work the organization does, such as manufacturing plant, fabricating, and assembly. In addition, work can also be divided along the vertical plane of an organization, such as hierarchy of authority from the lowest level manager to the highest level manager. Furthermore, coordinated work activity have three types, which is communication, formal hierarchy, and standardization. The first one is communication. Employee can sharing information forming common mental models. It also more flexibility. Other than that, it can be applied in team-based structure that include integrated roles and people responsible in coordinating job. The next coordinating work activity is formal hierarchy. It can be direct supervision. It also assigns formal power to manage other coordinating strategy for departmentalization. The last one is standardization. There are three types of standardization, which is standardization process such as a job description, standardization output such as a sales target, and the last one is standardization skill. Next element of organizational structure. The first one is span of control. Span of control is number of people directly reporting to the next level of hierarchy. Narrow span of control exists when a few people report directly to a manager, while wide span exists when a manager has many direct reports. Wider span of control possible when other coordinating mechanisms present, routine tasks, and low employee independence. Moreover, span of control interconnected with organizational size, which is company's growth. They need to put taller hierarchy and widen span. There are several problems if we have a taller hierarchy such as overhead costs, worse upward information, and focus power around manager and staff less empowered. Next, the firm can moving toward flatter structure, but flatter hierarchy also have an issue such as undermines management function, increased workload, and stress restrict management career development. That's all for me. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Nur Hidayah binti Aziz and I am the third presenter. Next, I will explain the element in organizational structure, which is centralization and decentralization. Centralization is the formal decision-making authority is held by a few people, usually at the top. Meanwhile, decentralization is decision-making authority is dispersed throughout the organization. The third element is formalization, which is the degree to which organization standardize behavior through rules, procedure, formal training, and related mechanism. There are four problems with formalization, which is reduce organization flexibility, discourage organization and organizational learning. Next is mechanistic versus organic structure. Mechanistic structure is a narrow span of control with high formalization and high decentralization. Meanwhile, organic structure is a wide span of control with little formalization and decentralization decision. Next is departmentalization. There are 5 structures in departmentalization, which is functional, divisional, team-based, metric, and network. Every structure has their own benefits and limitations. Firstly, functional structure, which is organized employees around specific knowledge or other resources, for example, like marketing and production. The benefit from functional structure are economy of scale and minimize costs. The limitation were it more emphasis on subunit than organizational goals. Secondly is divisional structure, which is organized employees around output, client or geographic areas such as healthcare and lighting products. The benefits from divisional structure are they focus on markets, product, and client. Meanwhile, the limitation and duplication and inefficient use of resources. Next is team-based structure, which is a self-directed work teams that complete an entire piece of work. There are 3 benefits in this structure, which is responsive, flexible, and lower administration costs. It also has their own limitation, which is interpersonal training costs and problem with supervisor role changes. Next, metric structure is also one of the structure under formalization. It means that employees are temporarily assigned to a specific project team and have permanent functional unit. The benefits from the metric structure can improve communications, flexibility, and innovation. The limitations from metric structure are it will increase goal conflict and ambiguity. Lastly, the network organizational structure or virtual structure. It is an alliance of firms creating a product or service. The benefits from this structure are potentially better use of skills and technology. The limitation from this network structure are exposed to market forces and less control over subcontractors than in-house. Next, I will explain about contingencies of organizational design. Contingency approach is relevant when choosing the most appropriate organizational structure. Why? Because ideas that work well in one situation might not work as well in another situation. There are 4 contingencies of organizational design or factors that influence the selection of organizational structure, which are external environment, size, technology, and strategy. The first one is external environment. There are 8 characteristics that influence the type of organizational structure based on the following situation, which are dynamic, stable, complex, simple, diverse, integrated, hostile, and munificent. The second contingencies of organizational design is size. There are some effects as organizations grow, such as more division of labor, greater use of standardization, more hierarchy and formalization, and more decentralization. That's all from me, and I will pass to my next member.
Hi and Assalamualaikum. My name is Rahana Najiha binti Iraza. I will continue the next presentation. The next point of the contingency organizational design is the technology and structure. Firstly is the variability. Variability is the supply chain process that level of the inconsistency or the variability in the flow of the goods throughout the firm. The organizational structure of the variability is a performance as to moderate by the environmental uncertainty. For example, is supply chain process variability is the complete partial mediator of the relationship between the organizational structure and the performance. Secondly is the analyzability. Analyzability is the process of the work problems that involve use to produce and the technical knowledge. This is the process of the organizational management and the structure on the workflow technology. The technology applied determine the structure and the managerial to the particular that given organizations. For example, is the employee have a 3 stage of the productions, which is the consumer value creations, input access, and the last one is the output conversions. The last point is the high variety and low analyzability. Variety is the frequency of unexpected and novel events that occur in the conversion process if they are high variability. Then for the low analyzability is the work can be reduced to the mechanical step and the participant can follow a set patterns to solve a problem. For example, it's about the data point are more dissimilar and its extreme value is the high variety and low analyzability. The last point is the organizational strategy. The first point is a structure follow strategy. In the organizational structure of the corporation, such as a divisions, department, team, process, and technology, are designed to achieve the form of the strategy. The current world of the fast-growing development and organization must be flexible to be able to adapt to the changing requirement, environment, and technology. For example, is technology department made to develop strategy for the technology the implementation simply because that what the technology department to do. The second point is the differentiations of a strategy. Differentiation strategy is based on the companies. When the different department, section or the branch office create their own corporate culture, which is the parents company overall structure. Hence, the sales staff, a differentiation company will have a different approach to their task than the accounting department. Definitions to the organizational culture. Organizational culture is the key developing to the trait necessary for the business success. Organizational culture is the collections of the value, expectations, and the practice that guide to the inform the actions to all of the members. Organizational culture provide 2 elements. The first element is the artifact. Artifact is the verbal symbol to the culture. It can include anything from the style to the poster on the wall to the volume of the speech. The first point is the physical. Physical is about the building structure to the organization to reflect culture throughout a company building, design of every employee workplace, and some other workspace for the employees to interact and communications with each other. For example, in order to motivate employee of the Google has been always providing the most relaxing working environment to their employees. Next, for the language. Language and the specific word used with the company on a regular basis have a major impact on the company culture. Language that used act as a moral compass for the people, such as influencing how they think, how they act, and feel in the different situations. The third point of the artifact organizational culture is ritual and ceremonies. Ritual and ceremonies is the habit and ceremonies together shape the culture of the organization's habit usually happen at the individual employee level. For example, an employee can eat lunch in the shared lunchroom rather than their dish as a of the habits. Spend 5 minutes after each meeting, debriefing the team about the work they learned. The last point is the story and legends. Every company has a story about the founder, pivotal time in their history, memorable employees, and other rich subjects. The story of the legend tell you the key information about the organizational value. For the leader have their company for a while, the corporation culture seen like a second nature can be a dangerous thing, particularly if the leader are blind to the obstacle that impeded the advancement of the new employees. The second element is the organizational culture invisible. Organizational culture refers to a system of the shared assumption, value and belief that show people the apparate and the inapparate behavior. This value have a strong influence of the employee behavior as well as organizational performance. The organizing function involves creating and implementing organization design decision. The culture of the organization is closely linked to the organizational design. Last but not least is the organizational culture strength. Some leaders try to incorporating team building activity or the creating more interesting value to encourage a productive environment and the positive attitude in the workplace. They have a three function which is a control system, social glue and the sense making. The control system is the form of the social control that influence employee decision and the behavior. The social glue is the people together make them feel like a part of the organization. The lastly is the sense making is to help the employee making sense what thing happens. The outcome of the organizational strength is the performance of the employees must well-being. I will pass to the next presenter. Thank you.
Thank you, Rahana. My name is Muhammad Khairul Nizam bin Mahsan and I will be your last presenter. I will present on the contingency of culture and performance. The effect of the organizational culture strength on the organizational performance is moderate. There are three things that need to be considered in contingency, which the first is ensure culture environment fits. Next, the second thing that must be considered is strength to level of corporate code. Then the third is create an adaptive culture. The adaptive culture will be practiced must be external focus, process focus, ownership and proactive. Next, I will explain on the change and strengthening organizational culture. There are four elements, which the first one is action of leaders and founders. Organizational culture sometimes reflect the founder's personality. If the founder have good personality, then the culture also will be good. Next, the second element is aligning of artifacts. The artifact keeps the culture in place and able to influence employees to practice them. After that, the third element is introducing culturally consistent reward. As we know, reward are very important mechanism to ensure employees stick to the organization. Finally, the last element is attracting, selecting and socializing employees. Socializing employees will ensure they practice the culture. Then we move to organizational socialization. The organizational socialization can be defined as learning process of a person about the value, expected behavior and social knowledge to know their roles in organization. The socialization is divided into two, which are learning process and adjustment process. The learning process is the new employees learn about the organization, physical, social and cultural dynamic. Then the adjustment process can be explained as the new employee must adapt to their new work environment, including their roles, the new team norms and new corporate culture value. After that, there are 3 stages of the socialization, which are pre-employment, encounter stage, and role management. The pre-employment is a person still an outsider, which he needs to collect the information about the organization and forming psychological contract. Then the second stage is encounter stage. Encounter stage whereby that person accepted to work in the organization and he is testing his expectation towards the organization. And lastly, the third stage is role management. The person has become the insider of organization, which he is changing his role and behavior in order to suit the organizational culture. Conflict arise. Then there are 2 methods to improving organizational socialization. The first method is realistic job preview or RJP. The top management must balance the positive and negative information about the job and work content, especially for new employees, to ensure they are able to work peacefully. And the second method is socialization agent, which are supervisor and co-workers. The supervisor is responsible to expose the employee about the technical information concerned with performance feedback. For the co-workers, they must be supportive to each other, especially to the new employees. They also must become the role model in practicing culture in organization. That's all from us. Thank you.